We are live on Proline TV, the Ourlads Football Network. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. We're talking about the Arizona Cardinals. And thanks for your patience as far as the live viewers are concerned, because we initially were supposed to start about an hour ago. And unfortunately, StreamYard had a global issue. So everybody was down for a couple of hours. But here we are. We're back, ready to go, talking Arizona Cardinals football. So thanks for tuning in with us, whether you are live or, of course, on demand. And whenever we talk about the Arizona Cardinals, Jess Root is going to join us, editor from the Cardinals Wire. How's it going there, Jess?
Well, this is the slow part of the offseason, and minicamp is just over, so it's going to get even slower because we've got about 5 weeks before training camp comes around. And yeah, it's been quiet for the Cardinals, but I think that's kind of important because the Cardinals over the last couple of years have also had distractions and nonsense happening in the offseason, which is a pleasant thing to not have to worry about. Although it
Okay,
doesn't give me as many clicks.
that's true.
The nonsense brings
Yeah,
brings clicks and stuff like that,
but a winning team brings more.
yes,
So
yes, it does.
yes. So, and there's a lot of that possibility for Arizona. I think they're one of many teams out there this season that I don't think anybody has any idea what they're going to do. I'm sure because if you're one of those teams that normally does not succeed, most people will be like, oh, yeah, it's the Cardinals. And I'm not sure it's still going to be one of those teams that people are going to jump on. But there's talent there. We saw last year. I think people forget that early on in the season that they were in first place, and a lot of people for at least a week or two maybe thought this could be their year, and then it quickly went away. But that's the process. There's a process to it. And what you noticed more than anything, Jess, this offseason was their firm belief that the one thing that they had to do was improve their defense. So 6 of their 7 draft picks were on defense, and their only 4 legitimate starters in free agency came on defense. So a lot came on defense. Before we get to the draft, Jess, and we, matter of fact, let me go ahead and pop up here the Ourlads Arizona depth chart. You can see what I mean here as far as because all the orange players, those are the ones that are in free agency. And there are, I believe, 19 free agents that they signed. 4, as I said, were the starting caliber players on defense. So before we talk about those guys, I got to ask you, Jess, out of the 15 other free agents they signed, and we're not going to bring in Brissett because he's a quarterback, but give me another couple of free agents that they signed that could be more valuable than we think.
Well, I think the one player I think that's going to be surprising, just based on his career previously, is going to be Akeem Davis Gaither, because he's probably the favorite right now to fill that Mike linebacker position that Kaiser White held for the last couple of years. And the Cardinals seem to philosophically be a team that they're just going to get linebackers that are ascending without having to pay them until they find a guy who's great. Kaiser White, before coming to Arizona, hadn't played the Mike position. The last 2 years, they signed guys. They signed Josh Woods in 2023, who basically had been a special teams player and was their other starter. Last year, they signed Mac Wilson, who had previously kind of been a gadget type player, a specialist player playing special teams, and became basically a full-time player. And now they're doing it again. And Akeem Davis Gaither, who's been mostly a special teamer, but started the last 7 games down the stretch last year for Cincinnati after Logan Wilson came down. And I think that's kind of a way that if you're not going to put high draft capital into the linebacker position, kind of the way to do it is to let other team draft a linebacker, develop them, and then when they're ready for a bigger role, go out and sign them to not expensive deals.
Sure.
And that seems so. Akeem Davis Gaither is going to be. He doesn't get the attention, but I think he'll be pretty impactful. I don't think he'll end up being a volume guy. If he is their Mike linebacker, he'll play most every down, and he'll probably pile up 100 plus tackles just by the way that they have their defensive scheme. That Mike linebacker is going to do that, especially with the additions that they made up front on the defensive edge and the defensive interior.
So is there a battle between the Mike job, or is Davis Gaither actually right now penciled in as the Mike linebacker? Because we have it the opposite.
Who do you have on there?
We have Mac Wilson.
Mac Wilson.
So should we switch that?
I would guess because if you put Mac at that Mike, you won't be able to use him as much in the off the edge and things like that, which what the Cardinals liked about Wilson's versatility.
Okay. All right. Excellent. We'll definitely see if we can make that change. And then, of course, they drafted Cody Simon. We'll get into that as well at linebacker. By the way, Campbell and Tomlinson, veteran players, they're getting up there in age, especially Campbell. And you would think that those players, usually one of two reasons they sign at this stage of their career: money, or they're chasing a championship. So I don't think they're chasing a championship in Arizona. It doesn't mean they can't get there, but that's not why they signed there. So do you think that that's the reason they signed there, is because, hey, these guys are going to give us the most money, that's why we're going there? Or was there something else?
For Calais, with potentially being his last season, his case was because he had offers other places, and,
Sure.
and I'll have to pull up the deal that it was that they gave him. It was a little bit more than he got last year from. So he's getting a $6 million deal, which maybe was the most that anyone else, but he did like the idea of coming home, finishing his career where he started, where he played the first 8 or 9 seasons of his career, and kind of his thought process: wouldn't it be great to end the way he started? His rookie year was when the Cardinals went to the Super Bowl. And so looking at the potential of this team, not to say that no one's
Sure.
going to look at this team and say that's a Super Bowl contender, but going from a team that was on the cusp, that was in control and kind of faltered late. They were an 8-win team last year. If you look at the roster, this team, they're significantly better defensively. They're going to win more games. That the playoffs is a real possibility. Once you get to the playoffs, you know that literally anything can happen. And so Calais, with a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit that they're paying him $6 million, and allows him to kind of put a wrap on his NFL career. Tomlinson is... it's probably the money, because it's.
Oh. You know what might have happened? I'm going to guess. This is going to be my guess, that Jess got a phone call. Because Jess he was having a hard time. The reason why we were about 5 or 6 minutes late. Oh, there he is. Wait, hold on, Jess. No one can hear you. What happened there, Jess?
I have no idea. It
wasn't a phone call?
No.
Okay. I was guessing it was a phone call, because that's usually what'll happen if you're on your cell phone and you get knocked off. But hey, that's okay. We got you back. All right, continue.
I was saying about Tomlinson is that after he got released by Cleveland, at this point in his career, of course it's gonna be a combination of two things. It's gonna be a combination of money and fit, and I think that he believes that he fits in what they're going to do. Now, I don't project personally Calais being a starter. Maybe that defensive line is going to be how they actually shake out. Right now, they have legitimately 8 players on the roster on the defensive line that should make an NFL roster. Their 2 best defensive linemen performance-wise last year, L.J. Collier and Dante Stills. Like if you're counting Darius Robinson and Walter Nolan, who they drafted in the first round, as ahead of them, like they're now defensive linemen number 7 and number 8. I don't know how that rotation is going to go. I don't think all 8 are going to be able to make the team. So something's going to happen, whether it's trading a guy like Dante Stills or cutting a guy like L.J. Collier. The 2 guys that people forget about are Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols, who were their 2 big ticket signings last year and basically got nothing out of them because Jones played 3 games, tore his triceps, and Nichols played 6 games and then had a neck stinger that ended his season. So you've got Campbell, you've got Tomlinson, you've got Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols. All 4 of those are well established. Well, Nichols and Jones are solid NFL veteran starting caliber players. Tomlinson and Campbell are above average players at their position. Then you add the first round picks of Darius Robinson last year and Walter Nolan this year, and then the performance that LJ Collier and Dante Stills has had. Stills might have been their most consistent, productive guy and on the defensive interior the last 2 years. And so you've got 8 guys who are probably battling for 6, maybe 7 roster spots, and how the playing time's going to shake out. That's going to be real interesting to watch because Nichols and Jones both have fully guaranteed salaries for this year. So moving off of them seems highly unlikely.
So I guess it's possible that if everybody stays healthy, like you said, maybe we see some sort of, which we get a lot right around the last week of training camp or last week of the preseason. You get those rosters, final rosters are made and deals are made. And so, yeah, maybe that's something that Arizona would like to see, meaning everybody's healthy and playing well, and we don't really have room for this depth, and we want to get something out of it. Okay. Let's then now Sweat, though, clearly the biggest move that Arizona's made as far as the offseason is concerned, outside, of course, of taking Nolan with their top pick. So that was a big one.
It was Sweat. Well, and it's 2 parts because their edge presence last year was so weak. And even going into the year, it was disappointing. Now, part of that was because B.J. Ojulari, their 2023 second-round pick, tore his ACL in training camp, and he was the guy they projected to be their best guy. So you went into last season, your top 3 edge guys being Zaven Collins, Dennis Gardeck, and I can't remember who would have been the third guy at the top. That you had Xavier Thomas and a couple other guys. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this year you get Sweat, who is not only a solid pass rusher, he's not an elite pass rusher. He's a solid pass rusher with elite run defense skills, paired with Zaven Collins, who he does not get the sacks. He led the team in sacks with 5 last year. But what's really important to note about Collins is that he excels at all the other parts of playing 3-4 outside linebacker. He's great against the run. He's physical. He's versatile. He can rush inside and out. He moves well in space, and he can peel off and cover. Everything he excels at, except the pass rush, where he is kind of pedestrian right now. Sure. He has room to prove because this is his 3rd year playing off the edge. And so you get physical strength with Sweat and Collins. B.J. Ojulari comes back. They traded for Baron Browning and then re-signed him. And he's got a little bit of pass rushing juice. If he could return to what he did in 2021 and 2022, where he had 9 sacks in 2 years as a rotational guy, you're going to take that every time. They drafted Jordan Burch in the 3rd round, and then their 5th round pick, Xavier Thomas, is, back of the depth chart. That room, that defensive interior and that defensive edge suddenly goes from being suspect to, in terms of solid talent, it is loaded. You don't have elite talent on the edge, but you have very, very reliable above average talent from top to bottom now.
Yeah, and this happens again, another reason why in the NFL, this is why it's important to find these things out, because there are so many teams that are in that middle, bracket where, because you're not following them, you look deep inside and you see they had a lot of injuries. And when those middle tier teams get injuries, they usually do not make the postseason. It's when they're healthy and everything's going right and the schedule and all that. But that shows you that, hey, watch out, though, because if they are healthy the next year, and that does now provide more depth, all of a sudden they could take that next step. And I think that's exactly where Arizona is myself. So, okay, before we get into the draft, let's see, they had 5 guys they signed also on defense outside of the top 4. And then he had 10 guys they signed on offense. Which one of the remaining 15 free agents do you think might contribute the most in a positive way?
Are you talking about guys they re-signed or that they brought
No,
in?
new guys.
New guys. Well, it's going to be interesting because I don't think that any of the guys that they have added that were outside of the organization will do much other than a supporting role. The
Okay.
one guy to kind of watch for might be Simi Fehoko, the long speedy receiver that they signed out from the who played for the Chargers last year. 6'4", 218, under 4.45 speed. He only has 10 catches in his career, but got some playing time last year, late in the year. I think he might be a quiet number 4 receiver that they have. Plus he plays on special teams. Other than that, like the guys they brought in, like Royce Newman, the offensive line, and Jake Curran, none of those really.
No.
They're going to be backups at best.
Yeah, depth.
They're going to be depth at best. Michael Walker, linebacker, he's going to be special teams guy. That's what he's done basically his entire career. Their offense was basically kept intact. They brought back Zay Jones. They brought back Evan Brown. The one departure they had is Will Hernandez, and they have third-round pick from last year, Isaiah Adams, ready to step in. He started the last 5 games of last year, and you can kind of pencil him in for the right guard job. But outside of those big defensive additions, they're probably not going to get a significant contribution from any of the new guys that came in.
As far as the guys returning, is Isaiah Adams, is he the only one that now steps into a starting role?
Yeah, because the other 4 spots, Jonah Williams returns, Paris Johnson, Yelda Froholt is still the center. They re-signed Evan Brown for the next 2 years to play left guard, and so that right guard spot is the only one that had any real question marks. And it still kind of is a question mark because Will Hernandez still was unsigned. He could come back, but it's been Adams who's been getting those reps in the offseason program.
Okay, cool. We'll keep an eye on that. Now, let's start taking a look now at the draft class. And we're going to start with that top pick, Walter Nolan. And oh, by the way, Arizona, just as a little side note, and this really, I guess this doesn't really mean anything, but I am hosting this show, so I might as well give you my take. And that is the fact that I had several teams with an A grade, and Arizona was one of them. So I really liked what they did in the draft. And it starts here with Nolan getting a really good player like Nolan, where they were able to grab him. He could have been a top 10 draft pick. He could have gone that high and nobody would have blinked. That's how talented he is. And taking a look again, we just talked about the 2 veterans that come in now, and then how deep this unit is. But Nolan, what specifically do you think, with all this depth here on the defensive line, what do you think Nolan can do that maybe the other guys can't?
Well, what he does is, I think he gives them their best true pass rusher from the interior. Darius Robin has some of that, but he's versatile, played edge in the interior when he was at Missouri. And if you look at Nolan, along with Dante Stills. He and Dante Stills are their best true pass rushing, the guys that have the best pass rushing juice from the interior. And Nolan has the athleticism to a much higher level than Stills. And his movements are fluid. He wants to do what Aaron, that's completely unfair to say, or for him to say is he's going to be like Aaron Donald. But if he's like, let's say, Kobe Turner for the first 2 years that he's been in the NFL for the Rams, that's fantastic. I don't know how much he's going to be able to play as a rookie, because you've got all those veterans. You've got last year's first-round draft pick, Darius Robinson, and most of the time the Cardinals only have 2 interior defenders playing most of the time. They'll go 2 or 3 at any one time, and so it's going to be they're going to end up with they're going to have 6 guys active, 7 guys active, and they're going to be very fresh throughout the game.
Okay. Let's stay, of course, on defense, because that's where 90% of this draft class resides. And let's stay up front and go with Jordan Birch, round 3. The one knock on Birch from our lad scouting on the kid is he's a little bit hot and cold when it comes to his motor. He needs to be a little bit more consistent in that department. But he's versatile, plays the power game, played obviously big time ball with Oregon, and then of course in the Big Ten this past year. So again, a really talented player that they were able to get in round 3. What do they like about Birch?
Well, what they like is his physical traits, his physicality. If you look at him side by side, he's built almost just like Darius Robinson, only he's better on the edge than he is on the interior. And he's got length, he's got pass rushing juice. Right now, like in terms of where he sits in the rotation, he's not going to play ahead of Sweater, Collins, or Ojolai, or probably Baron Browning. So he's probably getting them number 4, number 5 in that room. And so they have him playing a couple of spots defensively as depth, and you're going to see him play a role on special teams as a rookie. He's playing they got him in a lot of fourth down packages right now.
Yeah, matter of fact, special teams looks like it could come into play with several of these kids that they drafted. And that could be good news for Arizona special teams, that's for sure. All right, staying right around that area there at linebacker, Cody Simon, playing with the Ohio State Buckeyes, another Big Ten kid. Matter of fact, with Oregon moving to the Big Ten, there were 4 Big Ten draft picks for Arizona, all on defense. And, of course, Simon being one of them, who is really very good, an elite special teams player at Ohio State. Now, again, I think it looks, just even having you talk about the whole Davis Gaither Wilson thing, it does seem to make sense of why they drafted someone like Simon in this spot, because I'm sure they're hoping that no later than 2026, Simon's a starter.
That is a real thing. And the truth is, he probably has, of all the Cardinals draft picks, he perhaps has the highest upside as a rookie contributor this year. Because if things go well, he could be that every down starter. Like Walter Nolan's going to play, but he's not going to play a lot because of how they play the defensive line. Will Johnson has a chance to be a starter. But I think Cody Simon probably has the highest potential upside, especially where he was drafted there on day 3, is the fact that he could. I don't know how tight the competition is. I think the plan is Davis Gaither, but Cody Simon is a guy who has the juice to be able to be that guy. Think of TJ Edwards, what they had Edwards doing in Philadelphia, that sort of background, only kind of elevated. He's a lot like TJ Edwards. Physically, he looks a lot like Jordan Hicks, who's been a starter pretty much most of his career, and was a starter here in Arizona for a few years. And so Simon has some high upside. I don't think the plan is for him to start, but keep an eye on training camp and the preseason to see, can he make himself a starter over Davis Gaither?
Okay, now let's go to that secondary, because this is a big reason why I really liked this class a lot. And I mean, you can see my little M behind me kind of tip off, but it's Burke too. And you've got, 2 years ago, there is no way anybody would have believed that any one team in the NFL would have been able to draft both Will Johnson and Denzel Burke on the same team. No way. Because they were both ticketed for the first round and possibly even in the top 15 of the draft. Well, Burke had a little bit more of a slide where people just couldn't figure out why he wasn't making plays later in his career that he was making early in his career. Day one, true freshman starter, played all 4 years. Still, that's impressive at Ohio State. Will Johnson, we all know, based on what we've heard, the reason he slipped even to round 2 is just some of the teams are scared away by his injury situation, whether or not he's really 100% and whether he's going to be able to be that guy. But even so, our lads still, knowing all the information, we still had him ranked as the number 2 corner in the draft, day 1 starter. But it only, it just must have been one of those deals that happens every draft where some players just happen to slip through because the whispers about things like injuries or drugs or off the field this and they just slide. And then 2 or 3 years later, you realize, well, that was a bunch of malarkey. That team who got lucky and I think that's Will Johnson all day long. The dude is a stud. And yes, no question, if the kid's got some injury issues, anything can happen. You can end up just like a journeyman. But to get him in round 2, Arizona got the steal of the draft. This kid, if healthy, is you're looking at one of the best corners in the league. And then again, to be able to come back in round 5 to get Burke was also just a great move.
Yeah, the Cardinals they like drafting cornerbacks too. In 3 drafts under Monty Ossenfort, they've drafted 7 cornerbacks. They've drafted 2 this year, 3 last year. But you look at the room, and it felt unnecessary, especially the Burke pick later in the draft. But the news that came out a couple of weeks ago kind of clarified kind of why they went that route, and that's with Sean Murphy-Bunting. They signed him last year, veteran guy. Had a decent year, struggled a little bit early on, but decent year, like quality NFL starter, not high end. He was placed on the non-football injury list, and he's out for the year. He had a knee injury of some sort and needed surgery. So he's out of the picture for this year. And as it was, with Murphy-Bunting in there, you've got Garrett Williams, who's a stud at the slot. They had Star Thomas, who they really like, and last year's second-round pick, Max Melton. Adding Will Johnson to that group made it so somebody, you look at a guy probably like Thomas, and you were going to have to drop him to a solely special teams role, or he would be trade bait potentially because you just got too many cornerbacks in the room that you can keep. Now with Murphy-Bunting out for the year, currently the top 3, at least in OTAs and minicamp, are the 3 that figure to be. So you've got Star Thomas, you've got Max Melton, last year's second-round pick, and Garrett Williams in the slot. And at very minimum, Will Johnson is going to be that 4th guy. And last year they rotated Melton, Thomas, and Murphy-Bunting fairly consistently. Even Melton, who was number 4 of the cornerback rotation, played half the snaps and played them almost all on the boundary. So he would either come in for Murphy-Bunting or come in for Thomas. And now Johnson really has a shot. Like he has the tougher route, but he has a higher talent level to be able to be kind of quarterback one. That's like I say, Cody Simon has an easier route to be an every down starter. Will Johnson has the higher talent, but also has that door wide open because you could see him, being their cornerback one if he's healthy this offseason. And I will say this, that is the one concern about him. He slipped because of the long-term concerns with his knee. And that was frustrating to him because, my knee's fine. My knee feels good. The issue wasn't how he feels now. It's how some team doctors are like, his knee's not going to last 4 years. It's degenerative. But there is an injury concern because over the last 3 years, Johnson has dealt with the knee injury, the shoulder injury, the foot injury, and then in the pre-draft training had the hamstring come up, which caused him to not work on his pro day. And he sat out, he's had a tight hamstring in camp as well. And so while he did get work on 2 out of the 3 days in minicamp, they have been managing his workload, but hamstrings are tricky. So that is the one thing to look at with him. And I will say this, as much as I like Will Johnson as a player, my history with the Cardinals, I follow the Cardinals I will say this. Yeah. If the Cardinals are the ones making the exception for him, they're saying we're right and the league's wrong, there is a thing in the pit of my stomach that says they're not right.
I know.
They're not right.
That's what happens to
the talent of Johnson, though.
Yeah.
Even if he plays at a high level, and I guess that's where the risk comes in. You pick him at number 47, and it's a second-round pick. If you get 4 years and that's it, you don't feel as bad
Sure.
about it.
And
So
I didn't
if
think there's
something
any.
happens down the line.
Yeah, I didn't think that was a again. I don't think it was a knock on the teams not taking him. I think it was justifiable, but it was one of those things where, well, whoever does get him in round two is going to be the team that is going to have a great chance of being able to, look at this as just a tremendous get if he can stay healthy. And nowadays, with medicine the way that it is, doctors can say anything they want about his knee ain't gonna last, but we all know that the way things are going nowadays, nobody knows. So, but like you said, it's not a first round draft pick, so it is not the biggest deal in the world if you are at least given 4 good years out of a top player like that. All right, Burke, what have you found out from the Cardinals of what really happened to him and why he turned into a 5th round guy instead of a 1st round guy, which is where he was headed a couple of years ago?
Oh, it's interesting because no one they didn't even talk about him like, oh, we couldn't believe that we got him in the 5th round. It
Mm-hmm.
seemed to be that was kind of the general consensus. But what they did like was the experience. They liked the experience. They liked the athleticism. He does have good tape, as long with some questionable. But he's destined as a rookie to play special teams, which he
Yeah.
does. He does have special teams experience from his time at Ohio State too. But this year, he's destined to be kind of the back of the cornerback rotation, but as cornerback 5. Like he's likely gonna bump Keitrell Clark off the roster, who they had the last couple of years, who was another 5th round pick 2 years ago out of Louisville, a guy that Jonathan Gannon really liked. But it appears that his path to the roster is on 4th down and on kickoffs this year.
Okay.
We'll see what goes from there. But that's kind of the fun part of what the Cardinals have done with their defensive depth. That cornerback room really inexperienced in terms of the youth. Start Thomas going into year 3, Garrett Williams into year 3 are the senior members of the guys that are actually competing for roles and things like that.
Crawford, I know he's a 7th rounder, but did they make any sort of statement on particularly why they like him?
Well, what they really like about him is the athleticism and the elite special teams play. And that's he was one of my favorite picks in terms of like a 7th round pick. Most 7th round picks, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But when you get a guy who has such and you know what his ceiling is. He played at Texas, and what is he at
Yes.
Texas? He wasn't starter material at Texas. If you're not starter material at one of those big schools, you're probably never going to be a starter in the NFL. But then he goes to Nevada. He plays safety. He's a starter, but he's still elite on special teams. He logged over 1,000 special team snaps in his career. He kind of did a little bit of everything, and I think that's kind of where they have him pegged. Now, is a roster spot guaranteed for him? No, because they've got their 2 starters at safety, Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, they're locks. Last year's 4th round pick, Rabbit Taylor Demerson, a guy who they like on special teams, and 2 is that next up. And I think they view him. I believe they anticipate him being a starter after Jalen contracts expires next year. And so Crawford will be battling with other special teams guys like Joey Blunt, who's been his core special teamer for the last 2 years, extensive experience on the special team. So he's going to be battling for that 4th safety / special teams core guy role. Whether he makes the team or is on the practice squad, that's kind of the role he's destined for this year.
Okay. That is a look at the defensive class. There's only one guy on offense, the Texas guard, in round number 6. So did this make sense? Did this just best player on the board, or a specific reason why they wanted to get a guard when they got him?
Day 3 offensive line, that's kind of been a Cardinals mojo for forever. The day 3 offensive lineman, they've been doing that even back in the days of Steve Keim. Will Cook, does he have experience? He's smart. He's physical. He comes from a good program. And so he's just someone to add to the roster at the back end. He will probably be this year, based on how things going, if everyone's healthy, he will likely be, if they keep 9 offensive linemen or 10 offensive linemen, he's offensive line 9 or 10, and he's probably going to be inactive for almost every game this year, as a guy, because they've got their starters. John Gaines is probably their backup center. Royce Newman, as of right now, I would project him because he does have starting experience. He's going to project as their backup guard. They've got Kelvin Beachum as their backup swing tackle, and so Connor is going to be that OL 9 or 10, and he'll likely be. They're going to develop him, and he will probably be inactive for most of the year. But that's kind of how they roll with those late picks. Is if they don't have a role immediately, and they hopefully that's the thing with when you have a roster, you're hoping that your 6th round pick isn't good enough to start.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because that means your roster is lacking. Because there's a reason why that now 6th round pick often develop into something great, but not usually as rookies, and you don't count on those guys. So if your 6th round pick, if you're counting on your 6th round pick to be a contributor in year 1, you're probably not a very good roster. I think the Cardinals are past that point right now.
Is there one part of the roster where you take a look and go, I'm not sure Arizona was able to do this offseason. We're going to have to take a look at this position next offseason.
The one position, I mean, I think you look at the inside linebacker position, because of the way they run it, they kind of are flushing through players every couple of years. You'd like a longer term thing, but the one position where it seemed they really just stood pat, where everyone thought that they could have added somebody, was at receiver, and they really did nothing. Like, they got Marvin Harrison, who's going to be better. He was solid as a rookie. He wasn't elite, but it was disappointingly productive. Well, still the second best receiver season a Cardinals rookie has ever had. A Cardinals rookie receiver's ever had. So, but it wasn't Ladd McConkey, it wasn't Brian Thomas, it wasn't Malik Neighbors, so it didn't jump off the charts. But for a player in the Cardinals organization, and his numbers mirror very closely Larry Fitzgerald's rookie season and his father's rookie season, and he produced that while having a 100 catch tight end on the roster in Trey McBride, while those other guys, those other rookies, were often their number one option in the passing game. So Harrison's going to be better. They like Michael Wilson, and then they re-signed Zay Jones and Greg Dortch. Greg Dortch, who is kind of what he is, he's a very good returner. He's a gadget type player. The fact that they re-signed Zay Jones after last year, he only had 8 catches. I think he fits what they want to do. He was getting more playing time late, but he only had 8 catches in 2024. So you can't really be excited about the receiver room. But I guess how you look at it with that offense, you've got hopefully 1,000-yard receiver in Marvin Harrison. You know you have a guy that can get you 900 to 1,200 yards as a tight end in McBride. So you've got your top two.
And that's the key right there, because many teams have that.
Right. And so Michael Wilson, if he can bump it up to 750 yards or more, or have a combination of, you get 2 guys getting 600 plus, then your passing game is in a really good spot. Because what they've needed is that, and we know that they like to run the ball a lot. So you're always, the passing production is going to be up and down, because James Conner, elite runner, they believe that Trey Benson can kind of be a second RB1 with like a 1A and a 1B. And if you've got the running game that way, so you're not going to have volume numbers for everyone. But if you can get, if you get 1,000 plus from Marv, if you get 900 plus from Trey, and then you get either 600 plus from 2, or you can get like Michael Wilson up to 750, 800 yards, then you're getting a really productive pass game. Kyler Murray really believes in Wilson, believes that Wilson could be a 1,000-yard receiver. Sure, he loves him, and he's shown flashes of it. But the passing game, the receiver room, is the one where you look at and you're like, that's still a question mark. Everywhere else, like at receiver and then at inside linebacker, you really look at it as like, you could have done a little bit better in the offseason.
And look, the whole receiver thing, to me, I think gets overblown. Because it's maybe you look at, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Look at their receivers. I mean, that's why they won the Super Bowl. Not every team can go with like 3 stud type receivers on your team. It just doesn't work that way. It's rare. So when you have two good receivers and a top flight tight end, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Especially like you said, when you want to run the ball as often as you do, that's what your quarterback's supposed to do anyway, is elevate the other guys on the team. You don't need to have stars, 3-star receivers. You just don't. So, the more likely scenario is that your quarterback is the star, and that's of course what they're looking for out of Kyler. We know that. Okay, so couple more quick things before I let you go. Are there any UDFAs that they really liked, that they threw a lot of money at, that they showed a lot of interest in, or not? Or this is just a group of guys that really are pretty unremarkable?
Well, they signed, I think it was 6 undrafted rookies and then added a 7th. So 5 of them have guaranteed money that would basically guarantee them practice squad spots because it's equal to the practice squad salary for the entire year. And that would be the 2 offensive linemen, Josh Fryer and Jeremiah Byers. Then defensive lineman Elijah Simmons, and then receiver Bryson Green out of Wisconsin. I think it was 5 rookie free agents, and then they added a 6 because the other guy is Oscar Cardenas, tight end. He didn't get really any guaranteed money other than, but it looks like all of those guys will be people. There is some chatter about Elijah Simmons because of just the tank, because he's literally a phone booth. But here's the thing, he played like 500 total snaps in college, but as a traditional like 1990s tight like nose tackle, he could play that role perfectly. But I think he's destined for I don't think there's any way he can make the roster simply because that defensive line is so loaded with veterans and young talent as already. So all those guys are practice squad guys, in my opinion. I don't think there is really any shot for any of their rookie free agents to make the team this year, but they will stick around unless they're poached by another team to sign to their roster. They're destined for the practice squad this year.
And punter, is that going to be an open job, or is Gillikin safe?
He's the guy. They signed him to a 2-year deal last year. They like what he did. Things can always change, but the big change is that they didn't bring back Matt Prater. So Chad Ryland, who looked great and then a little shaky towards the end of the season, Ryland is the guy. Their special teams core. They bring back all 3 guys: Ryland, Gillikin, and then Aaron Brewer for, I think it's his 9th season as the Cardinals long snapper. And he's in his 30s, so he's at the point where until he's ready to retire. But yeah, the specialists, they got good work from their specialists last year. Ryland was solid, and so that I don't think there's any question, unless suddenly there is a precipitous drop in performance. That's who we're going to see from the specialists next year.
And lastly, Jess, was there any outcry by the fans when they looked at the schedule? Was there anything that was just ridiculously bad? Why did they have us do this? Or it's just the usual complaints here and there, nothing really to go crazy about?
It wasn't too bad as opposed to last year where they got murdered at the beginning of the year. This year's beginning of the season is really, really favorable. And if they are anything less than 4-2 or 5-1, like they should go 4-2, 5-1 the first 6 games. But their final 6 games, they are known, they have a reputation for collapsing late in seasons. This will either feed into that or is a perfect opportunity to break through that, because they play, I think, 3 of the 4 final games on the road. I think they go through 4 games against division winners, and then 2 that were in the playoff mix until the end, because I think it goes from week 12 on. They play Houston, LA twice, Cincinnati, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay. And so you've got the Rams, 2 games against the Rams late in the year, who are the division winners. You've got Houston, who is the division winners. You've got Tampa Bay, who was the division winner. And then Atlanta and Cincinnati, who both were in the mix
On the
until
cusp.
week
Yeah.
8. They were right there. So
Yeah.
those final 6 games are not easy at all.
Well, I think it's going to be a better year this year for Arizona than last year. So I do believe that there is going to be improvement. And we're going to talk more about that when you and I chat right around training camp and the preseason for our final preseason, long sort of phase interview. And then, of course, looking forward to anytime something's going on with the Arizona Cardinals. We'll be very hopeful that we can hook up with you and have some nice little short conversations during the season. Which again, if that's the case, then that means Arizona's doing well, and it's going to be a fun year. Steve Holler, by the way, just wanted to throw in his little comment here about how they improved at defensive end, but didn't like the depth. And I think that's what they have now and what we talked about.
Yeah.
And so you could say what you want about, like you were saying, Jess, that, man, there's a lot of depth here and all this. But hey, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to flood your team in an area where you were killing yourself last year because you had no depth. So what do? If you're smart, you flood that unit with as much depth as possible so it doesn't happen again.
Right. And they have if you look at the progression, 2022, they were a 4-win dumpster fire. 2023, in their first year under Jonathan Gannon, a good bad team, right? They weren't a good team, but they were a bad team. But like 4 wins, they were competitive in every game, so that made them a good bad team. Last year, they were perfectly mediocre because aside from the Carolina game, and you could the only game where you're like they can win that game. That was the disappointment in the year is when they lost to Carolina and then when they lost both games to Seattle. They lost to playoff teams and they beat teams that weren't playoff teams. They were perfectly mediocre. That's that 8-win team that was probably overall was their best case scenario. Like if you looked at it before the season, and then they were ahead of schedule. It's just they faded late. Their defense outperformed the talent, and even still, so there were 2 things they just didn't do well at all. They did not get off the field. They did not pressure the quarterback, and they didn't create turnovers. And I think that's the difference this year. They were an 8-win team last year. This defense is significantly more talented. They're going to be better. I've got this team as an 11-win team. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be in the mix for the division, and then we'll see what happens from there.
I was just taking a look at their win totals, and it's 8.5 over under at -110. And if you're right, then you can get over 10.5 at almost 3-1 odds. So I like that. We're going to talk about the NFC West on one of our upcoming Friday shows where we're taking a look at every division here on Proline TV. And we still have the NFC West to come. So we'll take a look at win totals. We'll take a look at that first game of the season where they're almost a touchdown favorite at New Orleans. We'll take a look at their Super Bowl odds, division odds, everything. Jim Feist will join me when we go over Arizona. But yeah, I mean, you're obviously optimistic. And I think it is all about health. It's about health and turning that corner and making the plays that weren't there maybe in the last couple of years. But I think now they're older, more mature, and even the coaching staff is. So, yeah. And I also like the fact that I think Arizona is going to be one of those teams that will not be talked about. Because I think there are teams that will be talked. Like I think everybody's going to talk up Carolina or Atlanta, and I think those teams deserve to be talked up. But I just don't think Arizona is going to be one of those teams. I think there are too many people, like experts, who probably have been bitten by the Arizona deal. Yes. I'm not doing that again.
100%.
Yeah. So I think that's a good thing for Arizona. So anyway, we'll talk more about that for sure on other shows here on our network, as well as when we talk to Jess right around training camp. And by the way, we're going to have links in the description so you can check out everything on social media with Jess. And you also, Jess, are the host of the Rise Up See Red pod. So how often is that show available?
During the season, it's 2 to 3 times a week. In the off season, 1 to 2 times a week. I'm about to record another episode right after we get off with you, as we're going to wrap up our training camp. And then we've got, over the next several weeks, division rankings as we do one of the series that we do. And then we'll get into our opponent previews where I have a lot of guests from around the NFL. for that. But yeah, that's it. I call it the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web, but I am biased.
Well, hey, and there's really nothing else out there anyway, right? You could say that too. I'm only kidding. No, Jess does a great job, and that's why we want him on this program and on this network as often as possible. And if it's a magical season, and I'm talking about magical, I'm talking about postseason. If it's a magical postseason season, then we definitely want to make sure that we're talking with you as often as possible, Jeff. So thanks a lot as always, and we'll talk in a couple of months.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everybody.